We have a very awesome panel today, and we're really excited to cover this topic. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge that there's a lot of stuff that's going on in our city right now with traffic and congestion and people considering a return to the office. There's a global pandemic that's going on, but also within our region, we just have a really tragic forest fires that are having a pretty significant impact on the quality of life for everyone. So I appreciate people taking time to be here today and to learn about this valuable topic. There are a ton of working parents and organizations that have expressed concerns for their working parents, and we're really excited with the presenters that we have today. So first, I would like to introduce our first panelist. Her name is Jessica Eggert. Jessica is the CEO of Leg Up, helping childcare business owners thrive and helping working parents access affordable, quality, full-time, and backup childcare. Jessica has spent her entire career in business operations, HR, and DEI, working with companies across the US and Europe. Previous to starting Leg Up, Jessica was the head of culture and innovation at The Riveter and is currently an advisor to startups that support women and people of color in business and mental health. Jessica is the mother of a 7-year-old and a 1-year-old, and she and her family are currently living in Seattle. Jessica, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Nick. I'm excited to be here and talking with everybody. I was just telling Anne and Monica, it's so nice to talk to adults instead of just children, and then also talk to people about things that aren't just work. So thanks for attending. We can get started. Nick, do you want to go to the first slide? Let me know if there's something I need to do too. And while he's working on that, really quickly, like Nick mentioned, I'm the CEO of a company called Leg Up, and we work to support childcare providers, and we help families find available care. I also lead a group called the Working Parent Support Team. We created the Working Parent Support Guide, and we are the creators of the Working Parent Support Survey, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And we created this to specifically help companies support their working parents. We created the guide back in May, right after everyone had been home, everyone was freaking out. Okay, what does it look like when we go back to the office? But we noticed that there weren't a lot of people sitting talking about how to support our parents right now. And so we created the first version, and we'll be creating the next one soon. And we'll be talking a lot about that. But
hey, are you not able to see the first screen?
I can't. No. I see.
Let me just try again. Apologies for this, everyone. Are you seeing it now?
There we go. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. So pre-COVID, we knew there were already a lot of struggles for working parents. Pre-COVID, every year, about 2 million parents either have to step out of the workforce and make extreme sacrifices, career sacrifices, because of inaccessibility to care. And it's costing providers $3 billion, type it right there, but it's costing corporations $3 billion a year in lost revenue because of these issues. And COVID has really just exacerbated this problem. Back in April, there was a survey that went out to parents and said, how likely is it that you are going to quit? And only 6% of parents surveyed said that it was likely that they were looking at it, looking at quitting. And back in July, another survey went out to the same exact parents, and 27% said that they were looking at quitting their jobs. And I mentioned our Working Parent Support Survey. We released this on Monday, and we've gotten a lot of results from parents at different companies and different sectors across the US actually. And some preliminary data is showing that 79% of families with school-age children are learning at home right now versus pods or at school. So parents are at home with all of their children right now. 77% of families with children learning outside of the home are spending an extra $1,000 a month during COVID, when we honestly we should be saving, right? And now 62% of families are caring for their children when they're not actually in school. And if you have school-age children, the school hours start around 8 and go to about 3 p.m. And so families are taking care of those children in between and during those off hours. And so the question we get asked often is, what can companies do to support their parents, their working parent employees? And we've broken it down. We're going to talk about 3 different areas today: policies and norms that you can be creating inside of your organization, communication strategies, and then benefits, benefit programs. So getting started with policies and norms. The 4 different areas we'll talk about are defining what flexibility actually means, setting and readjusting goals, readjusting our performance reviews, and then time off, looking at different time off policies. You can go to the next one. Oh, no, you're good. Thanks, Zach. So first up, when we talk about adjusting goals, we know that everybody has different availability right now, whether you are a parent or you aren't. COVID 2020 has just caused so much disruption to our lives, and availability has shifted. So our goals have to as well. And I think this is something that's very hard for companies, especially when you have, I run a company, and for me, I have people I report to, I have shareholders, and it's very hard for us to say we have to readjust or lessen our goals. But if we don't, then we're going to be losing our working parent employees. So how can we readjust our goals and say what is actually mission critical right now? And then tell our working parent employees, all employees, what are they actually being evaluated on right now? How can we readjust our goals to make sure that our employees can thrive, our employees feel that they can actually succeed in their role and feel a little bit uplifted during these tough times? Looking at performance reviews. Reconsider or consider restructuring your reviews, or even just the timing of reviews. Our standard reviews, reviews usually happen around this time, especially walking into the new year. If we are holding the same standards, if we are creating the same structure for our performance reviews, we're most likely just setting our teams and our managers up to fail. So how can we look at restructuring some of these? Maybe instead of only giving raises to certain people, perhaps we give blanket raises. Again, that's tough. These are all potential possibilities. But let's look at potential blanket raises to everybody. Judging our team members on their performance before COVID started, not looking at everything that's happened since the last week of February, first week of March of this year. Changing, if we are doing performance reviews, is consider changing your 360 questions to be a little bit more supportive and uplifting. Asking employees to gauge their team members on how well they were able to support them and how great a team member they were in spite of COVID. Just change up, look at your questions and see if you need to restructure any of those. And the biggest thing is, don't increase the parent promotion gap. We know when it comes to diversity within the workplace, there tends to not just be raise gaps, gaps in salary, gaps in pay, but there are also gaps in promotions and who is getting promoted. So let's be cognizant and make sure we're not increasing that parent promotion gap. And then really quickly, I want to note that these were all policies and program suggestions that came from companies that we're working with across Washington, mostly in the King County area. And so these are all tried and true practices. Nothing is perfect, but these are all just suggestions. So when we're looking at policies and norms when considering time off, not every company is Facebook, and not every company can give 6 weeks off to all parents like a Salesforce can. But what can we do, especially if we're smaller, medium-sized companies? Could we consider giving a week or 2 off during the start of the school year right now, especially as teachers are trying to understand the technology. They're still figuring out schedules. They're still helping children and all of their students get used to remote learning, and parents are picking up a lot of that slack. I was just telling Nick, I just raced over here from helping my son out at a pod program that he's in. And I had to take off, 3 hours of the day to go support them and the teams. And could we consider giving our working parent employees at least 1 to 2 weeks off during this time? Or consider one company that we work with was giving 1 day off a week, either a Friday or a Monday, basically just stretching out that weekend. So there's a little bit more time to get everything done that's needed at home and really just ease their way back into the work week. And then can we look at extending our parental leave policies, but for all parents? Everybody is struggling. Instead of just giving one parent group, or specifically mothers, right? Instead of just giving them 12 weeks and fathers 2 weeks, could we extend it both to 12 weeks? Could we give both sides or all family members, the same equal amount of time off? And then we can go back one, but that's okay. Communication. So let's talk about communication now. I think we might be missing one, but that's okay. We're good. We'll keep going. Now, these are our tips for managers. So when we created a working parent support guide, we got these tips for managers from executives and from managers who were finding some type of balance, some system that worked inside of their companies. And so tips for managers when they're communicating with their teams, start every one-on-one meeting with a mental health check, just checking in, saying, how are you doing? What's going on? Is there anything I can support you with? As we're working remote, consider treating Slack like your office, like you're in an office, right? Checking in, saying, hey, I'm going for a walk, I'll be right back, or I'm grabbing some lunch, or I'm switching my child's Zoom class. So there's constant communication, and it's never just oh, that person's gone, I haven't heard from them 3 hours, I don't even know if they're working. And then for managers, making sure we're asking our employees a lot of questions within our one-on-ones that are a little bit different, right? So some of these questions were ones that managers have been using with their teams, saying, these are really challenging times for everyone. How can I best offer support for you? Are there any tasks or projects lately that feel like more of a struggle than usual? Or how can I adjust things to help make that project more manageable right now? Make sure you have one clear space where people can find the goals, where they can see the current schedules that everybody has, and they can collaborate on documents. Remote work is already stressful enough, and when your brain's being pulled in multiple ways, make sure there's just one hub that everyone could come back to. And then as a manager, making sure we're modeling healthy behaviors. So don't send unimportant emails at nighttime or over the weekends unless that's a norm that you've created. Communicate your online and your offline hours. And then let's stop apologizing whenever our kids hop on calls, because they're here and they're not going anywhere. And so apologizing for it makes it seem like it's kind of a wrong thing. And then right now, it's just a norm. Now, these are tips that we actually got from executives at local companies in Seattle. And this one was from Karen Snyder, the CEO of Textio. She said, let's start every meeting, not just one-on-ones, but every meeting with a quick check-in. Invite everyone to share their current frame of mind in just a couple of words, giving space for any emotion that comes up. And that's because it can help recenter the conversation and clear the distractions that are in everyone's mind and create a safe space for focus. Dan Lewis, the CEO of Convoy, said he likes to use this opportunity use this time as an opportunity to connect on a more personal level with their managers, but even and not even director or individuals who are not direct reports. The line between work and life is more blurred than ever, and working from home opens up fun new ways to learn about each other. And then Xiao Wang from Boundless mentioned, and I thought this one was really, really important. Continue experimenting. This is a first for everyone, and not just if you're non-remote, but if you have working parent employees, everyone's still trying to figure out what is best to do. We don't know what will work, what won't, and what will be engaging, or what will add unnecessary stress. The only thing that matters is that we keep trying. And the last section I wanted to go over was benefits, specifically childcare and mental health support. When we think about childcare, childcare isn't just for families with children 0 to 5. It extends from 5 and up, right? Especially during these school age times. Many families are doing pod programs, and like I mentioned, they're spending $1,000 plus. Can we consider offering a pod as a benefit or reimbursing our employees for that, for those costs? And for the school materials, desks, technology, if their student hasn't been given one, there's a lot of materials that are being required more than the usual. And also teachers are requiring a little bit more support to help, especially help students who are in need. See if we can offer any reimbursements there. Tutoring, GoPeer is a very good tutoring program where you can sign up, I believe it's $12.50 a month, and then an additional $20 an hour, where children, especially older children right now, can get some tutoring support in different subjects. And then consider reimbursing for any busy time activities to fill those gaps when the children aren't learning and they're at home and the parents are trying to finish a few more hours of work. So any type of online camps or classes. And then continue on the childcare side, full-time or part-time childcare. I do want to mention that, again, it's not just for 0 to 5. Childcare providers can support children all the way up to 12, and many of them are doing pod programs, and those tend to be a little bit more expensive than just the pod programs that are around the community. So consider reimbursing for tuition or even seat deposits. That's often a very big chunk that a parent has to pay up front. And then look into backup care solutions, especially as things become a little bit more safe, or a family feels that they are welcome to using a nanny service or putting their child into a backup child care center. There's many nanny services around Washington State, around Seattle. Seattle Nanny Parent Connection is a fantastic one, and then Spilt Milk is a really great backup care solution. And then Leg Up also offers backup child care solutions at centers. And last, we're talking about mental health support. And first, really, when we talk about mental health and thinking in-person or online therapy, so there's Modern Health, which is a really great benefit for companies, fairly reasonable pricing. Headspace is a great one, and also Talkspace for online therapy. But then it also extends not just to therapy, but to family peer groups and ERGs. How can we get our groups of parents together inside the workforce to support each other and just recognize that they're not the only ones going through this? And if you don't have enough parents to create an ERG internally, employee resource group that is, there are local ones like Families of Color Seattle that you can check out, and it's free right now for their online programs. And then PEPS groups. They do have programs for families who, normally it's for families who've just given birth, but they do have extended it to parents with older children as well. And I think the biggest thing is that empathy is key right now. Empathy coming from ourselves, but also creating an environment of empathy. I notice, there's a conversation that's happening right now, what I've seen online, and some employees, especially during the Working Parent Support Survey, we're seeing this. The animosity that comes from people who may not be parents, whether it's real or perceived. There's a feeling that those who don't have children may be feeling a little more frustrated with parents who don't, or with our parents, working parents. So let's create an environment of empathy and making sure that everybody just understands that everyone is going through something, and then finding out the best way that we can support through constant communication. And that's it from me. We'd love for you to take the Working Parent Support Survey if you can. This is open to all working parents, and we'll be releasing the data on October 2nd, releasing those results and example policies and programs. And then if you're looking for childcare, you can always go to legup.care.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And a couple things that I forgot to mention before we started. These slides will be available in a follow-up email that I will send to everyone directly. Additionally, this is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel, and I will include a link to that in my follow-up email. If folks who are in attendance do have questions, please use the Q&A box to ask those questions, and we'll be answering everyone's questions to the panelists at the end. If you have a question for a specific panelist, please just type their name in, say that, this is a question for Jessica, this is a question for Anne. So I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Her name is Anne Mahoney. Anne Mahoney is a Senior Business Process Improvement Manager at Nordstrom's. Anne has worked at Nordstrom's for 17 years, starting on the sales floor and working her way up to her current position where her team focuses their energies on positively impacting top and bottom line results by teaching NMG to apply, lead, and coach lean principles and tools. Anne is the mother of 2 wonderful children, Olivia and Miller, who just started third grade and kindergarten respectively, and well, let's just say that virtual kindergarten is pretty tough. Anne, the floor is yours.
Well said, Nick. Yeah, school from home can definitely be challenging, and I loved so much of what Jessica said, and I was trying to piece it all together in my own head and how this might apply to us at Nordstrom. So well done, Jessica. And I'm definitely one of that 79% where I've got kids schooling at home, need for childcare. What do we do after the school hours? How do I balance my day with the kids? So I'm right in that environment. So as Nick shared a little bit, yep, you can go to the next slide. That's great. About me, I work at Nordstrom. I work on our business process team. So I'm in a unique position where not only am I a working parent, but our team also supports the Nordstrom business in a unique way to help Nordstrom as a company. So the struggle is real for all of us, whether at the macro level, you're an executive leading a company, whether you're managing a team, and top on you or yourself as a working parent. We're just all trying to balance working from home. Even if you're not a parent, we're just trying to balance all the change, all of that stuff that has happened this year that Nick acknowledged at the beginning of our webinar. And we need to be able to create space and balance for ourselves as parents, as individuals, and all while we wear all of these different hats all the time. So what I really try to focus on, not only as myself, but as a leader in our org and as an executive leader coach, coaching our leaders at Nordstrom, is around organizational health. Yes, results are important, but if we don't have organizational health and stable, solid people who want to have flexibility and balance, and as Jessica said, to really build that empathy within our culture, we're not going to achieve those results. Mindfulness. This is not something that we often tend to talk about sometimes in a working environment. It's really about focusing on the whole human and what does everyone need as an individual. And that includes the executives, the leaders, the managers, and the teams. Focusing on flexibility. We can all have systems, goals, a schedule, a plan. And Jessica, I love that you said, stop apologizing for the tiny people popping up in the background. I'm going to start that tomorrow. Being flexible. It's okay to give grace. It's okay to say, I can't attend that meeting. It's okay to start to create balance in your life. What do you need as a whole human? We coach our leaders, like if you're a runner, how do you build that into your day? Smoke outside, not going to happen. So how do we start to build some awareness into those routines that make us feel balanced within our day? And lastly, what we focus on is leading differently. So how do we enable our leaders to actually lead differently than we ever have before? And there's so many situations that has happened in 2020 that we have to lead differently. So that's what we try to focus on, and how we support the business. I'm going to go through these couple of boxes really quickly. Why does our team exist? The team that I work on is to really impact top line and bottom line, but it's to lead, teach, and coach these principles and tools. Our vision is every day, everyone improving, and how we're going to do that is by equipping our leaders to grow their teams through problem solving, streamlining work, improving communication, and eliminating waste. So basically, we're teaching our leaders how to fish versus just giving them the fish. We're teaching them how to problem solve upstream versus just solving the problems downstream, which can eliminate some of that firefighting effect. And really focusing on the principles of I do, we do, you do. Some of the things that now Nordstrom is doing, we do have an ERG group called Parents at Nordstrom. So Nordstrom is supporting our working parents through this awesome ERG group. We've also started to declare some no meeting blocks to kind of help create that flexibility and balance, not just for working parents, but for everyone. So 8 to 9, no scheduled corporate meetings. 12 to 1, let's take a lunch break, and let's try to not schedule meetings after 5. The creative virtual meeting options is how do we use all these awesome tools and get smarter at using Zoom and Blue Jeans and Microsoft Teams, and how do we say, to be flexible, I can't make that 9 o'clock meeting. I have to help my kid get on their Zoom call. Can we record the meeting? Can you put at my name in the chat? Can you put at my name on the Trello card if we're using Trello to manage that part of our day, so that I can feel relief and mindfulness that I am giving myself permission and empathy to miss that meeting if I have to. And I loved this quote from one of our executives, that practice giving grace over the next few weeks as teams work through new routines. I think that goes back to the empathy point as well. All right, next slide, Nick. So this is an example of what we're using to kind of coach our leaders of what this can look like in action. We're using a version of standard work where we're kind of helping to define simple standard work buckets. This is set up for our executive team at Nordstrom, but we can also insert what this looks like for your home life and your kids. So you can see those 3 gray boxes that I mentioned of no meeting blocks. Let's call out really quickly, if you're a leader or an executive, we have a yellow box that says, as a leader, your role is to not schedule over a standard your team needs. So again, really focusing on what your team needs to get their work, their life, their relationships, their day accomplished. And let's try our best as executives and leaders and managers to not disrupt that for them. We have a structure of daily huddles where we have a tiered huddles system set up at Nordstrom. Having standard time for touch bases, maybe the afternoon is for team meetings, collaboration, partners, touch bases, uninterrupted work time. A standard place for office hours and a standard place for reflection. Whether these buckets move or everything fits into these buckets is not the end goal, but especially as a working parent and even virtually from home, to be able to show up any given day of the week and know what hat am I going to put on and when am I going to put on that hat at what time of the day. I know if I have touch bases from 11 to noon, that's a very different hat that I have to put on where I'm mentoring, leading, or having those performance reviews than if I'm meeting with a peer and we're talking about strategy and driving business results. So separating those things versus ping-ponging all day long on 30-minute Zoom calls between a strategy hat and a touch base hat and a mom hat and a wife hat, it can be really overwhelming and mentally exhausting. So creating some structure and then making it visual. The colors do tell a story. This can be posted on your kid's whiteboard. It can be posted next to your desk. I think this is a great way, and we're attempting to get our entire company there, so wish us luck. We can move to the next slide. Okay, so this is a teaching model that we use. It definitely comes from Lean, or if you've heard of the Toyota way, which has typically been practiced in manufacturing. We're applying this principle here in retail, and we're applying it with our executive team and our leaders. This system where you see this circle, I'll walk you through really quickly, but it's a simple structure to make your working environment and home life much easier. So if we were to say, what are your strategies as a leader and as an executive, as a wife, as a mom, as a dad? My strategy is to improve my customer assortment. What does that look like? What does success for that look like? I would ask my leaders. Well, I would need to make sure that I'm having an increase in an increase in top line. Great. How are we going to measure that success? Okay, well, I probably would want to see these types of metrics. I'd want to see where my growth is or my trend over time. How will you share that plan with your team? Well, I probably should have a meeting with them or a touch base with them. And do we have time on the calendar to be able to do that? Your strategy should also include the whole human. So if you're looking at who I am as a whole person, one of my strategies right now is also being a mom and being able to support my children at home. I can't be 100% mom or 100% work and all the time. Those lines are now blurred. So I might say my strategy for this month, this week, is all of those things at once. And I would want to define, what does success look like? How am I going to measure? And how am I going to share the plan with my team? Maybe my team is my husband. Maybe my team is also my coworkers and or the executives that I work with. As a part of the Nordstrom system, we also have those daily huddles we saw in that colored block, which is space and time to meet with your team daily. And how will those priorities show up? So let's make sure that we're talking about them on a regular basis. Visual management is about knowing the truth. So how do we make our work visual? This extremely applies to my young children too. If they are clear on what our strategy is for the school year, if we have time to talk about it before school starts or after school starts, and they have clear visuals on what their work is, they're more likely to succeed and more aligned, as am I more likely to support them as their support system. And lastly, where the system really connects is through leaders' standard work. And that was that calendar version of those colored boxes of how do you as leaders show up to hold your team accountable. So this is a methodology, and it really is around trying to solve problems on how leaders can help support their teams. But I think this is a model that supports balance and productivity, the importance for daily reflection and for improvement. We do this with my kids at the dinner table, and we just ask them, what was their peach, their bright spot of the day, and what was their pit, their bad part of their day? This allows us to kind of say, how do we need to rejigger our strategy for tomorrow? What do we need to make visual? What do we need to talk about? It works the same with executives. Toddlers are executives. I swear it can work the same. And also to be flexible. The empathy part, being flexible for yourself first, being flexible for those that you support, and also for your peer group. That's the end of my spiel, Nick, but I think Jessica did a great way teeing it up, and this led right into that. So awesome job.
And thank you so much. I loved how well your guys' presentations just sort of flowed together. And I also really liked the toddlers are, or executives are toddlers, because when you were talking about that structure for your toddlers, I was like, wow, that would be so nice to have in my day-to-day life as well. So our next speaker is Monica Ibarra. Monica is the Director of Human Resources for the Downtown Seattle Association. She works alongside the senior leadership team to provide human resources strategic planning to the organization. The Downtown Seattle Association is the managing agent to the Metropolitan Improvement District and Commute Seattle. Monica is responsible for managing all HR operations for the organization, which includes recruitment, strategic planning, employee relations, compliance, employee engagement, and the relationships with external members and partners. Prior to joining the DSA, Monica worked in HR for 15 years in the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. However, her passion has always been in nonprofits. Monica holds a BS in Business Management and an MBA from Seattle University. Monica is the proud mom of her school-age daughter, Kira. Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Nick, and thank you for inviting me to be here. It was such a pleasure getting to meet Anne and Jessica before the our little webinar this afternoon. And like Jessica said, it was such a great opportunity to talk to other working parents, not specifically about what we do in our orgs, but just to collaborate, to talk about what's working and non-school things. So it's been great. So thank you again, Nick and Commute Seattle, for inviting me to share some of my experience and our experience here at DSA Mid and Commute Seattle. So when Nick and I were talking about what I was going to present today, he really wanted me to focus on how our workforce is a little bit different than everybody solely working from home. So we have a large part of our organization that actually continued to work through the pandemic. We only had a short period of time where team members weren't working. I think it was approximately 3 days. So Nick asked me to share how we've tweaked our operations, what we've done for those working families, and how we've kind of kept everybody safe. So I just wanted to briefly kind of touch on what we did with approximately 125 team members that do work out on the field which encompasses our Clean, Safe Parks and Outreach team. So it goes along with what Jessica and Ann were saying about having empathy and how we support folks. It's not only a challenging time for working parents, but also for that change in how we all do business. So we were very mindful and acted with a lot of intent on when we decided to furlough a good portion of our team members. We overly communicated with them, listened to them. We covered all of their benefits during the time, so medical, dental, vision. We continued to support them with touch base and check-in calls, which encompasses giving them numbers to our employee assistance programs. Like Jessica mentioned, mental health is so important. So ensuring that our team members that weren't working reduced hours still had that support and those check-ins with their direct supervisors and managers to ensure that they were doing well. We can kind of go to the next slide if you want, Nick. So some of the individualized support that we do for our team members here is to listen. Each person has a different story, has a different need. Some don't have the ability, a good portion don't have the ability to work from home. So how do we tweak their work day to ensure that when they are here working in the field that their children are being cared for when so many of their children's schools are remote learning and their childcare are closed as well. So definitely not every situation is the same. So just being very mindful and listening. And then we kind of come up with a plan. So looking at each person holistically, saying, okay, well, let's see if you can take off a reduced schedule. So if you can take off four days a week and you can find care for 1 day a week, how do we tweak that so where team members can still come to work but have and support their children, but also have a peace of mind that the day that they are there, that their children are being taken care of. And then communicating is so important to offer not only communication with that team member, but for their managers. We have some teams that are a lot smaller than others, so being able to kind of tweak the schedule and being in constant communication, not only with our team members, but our team members working with their support system, so their spouse or whoever is helping them raise their children, being very mindful of that. And then what resources do we have for our folks? So like I mentioned earlier, employee assistance program. We also offer other things that employees they have a really great networking system within their own departments. And then again, that continued one-on-one support that we give, the constant phone calls, constant check-ins, and then kind of to pivot to some of our folks that work here in the office that are remote learning. So Nick asked me to talk a little bit about what we do here. So right now we only have a couple folks that are actually coming into the office. So it's really easy to kind of juggle who's here, who's not here. But a lot of us are working parents. I know I've talked to a couple other working parents here and setting up how we set up workspaces for ourselves and for our children to optimize the learning experience and the working experience. So I kind of wanted to share a little bit about some of the tools that I've used to help my fifth grader be a good remote learner, and then me as well as be able to achieve the goals that I need to achieve. So if we can go to the next slide, this is my 10-year-old, Kira. So to help her, and these are ideas that working parents can do for their children as well if they have the space. I just took a little nook out of a spare bedroom to help create this. So it doesn't take a lot of space, but I moved the stuff out of her room to try to eliminate distractions to where she has a designated space to do her schoolwork, and then she has a reading corner. Just like Ann said, labeling everything, having a schedule, having a check-in not only with team members but with our children to see I like how Anne said the pit and the peach. The peach, what was the peach and what was the pit? I always ask, what is your high point? What is your low point? And how do we change that? So I think that, again, is a transferable skill, not only with our children, but with ourselves. So my daughter has gotten into the habit of asking me what my high point and low point for the day is, and then we come up with a plan together. So I think as working parents and in all of us shifting the way that we do business, it's to communicate and to have that empathy that Jessica spoke with, and just to be very flexible and to have a lot of grace. I think that is what has helped me as a working mom, as a single parent. So that also presents a challenge in and of itself. We do have, like I mentioned earlier, very diverse workforce. So a good portion of our workforce are also single parents. So giving them that time that they need, taking advantage of the CARES Act and the extended FFCRA laws. So allowing them to stay home with their children while they have virtual school and no care, and still allowing those team members to get a paycheck and to be covered through our benefits. I think that really puts a great ease and it's so much just a weight lifted off their shoulders to know that us as an organization, we're supporting them and we're working in conjunction with them to give them the best experience that for themselves as well as for their children. So that's all I really have. Thanks, Nick.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Monica. I really like the ending part where you were talking about empathy and understanding that people that have been working remote or doing the school remote might not have the same ability to return to the office. That's something that Commute Seattle has really been encouraging employers to explore when they're planning a return to the office, is that while there's plenty of concerns around safety of getting to and from an office, safety in an office place, how many steps have to be taken to ensure the safety there, it might not be a realistic that parents are returning at this time when they're just starting remote schooling, when they have to worry about childcare and their children receiving an education and staying on top of things. So really having some empathy and consideration that that's something that needs to be thought out. So now we are open to questions from our attendees. Please use the Q&A box at the top. I'd like to invite all of our panelists back to answer those questions. And there was one question that was asked in the chat box that Jessica answered, but I'm hoping maybe, Jessica, you would answer that again. It was from Marcy, and it said, what do you suggest we do for employees without kids so that they receive additional benefits as well? And if all of our panelists want to hop back on, that would be lovely.
Sorry, I know I answered that before.
Yeah.
Oh, and it didn't go to everybody again. Sorry about that. And so you were, Marcy was asking, yeah, what do you suggest for employees without kids so that everybody receives additional benefits? And so one of my, something I suggest is taking a look at the budgets of where we were spending money on benefits before. And I know a lot of the things that we were spending money on makes no sense now, especially since we're not in an office. And then restructuring. So restructuring any of your current benefit programs to possibly give the same amount of money that you're giving to working parents to everybody and letting them spend it on whatever they need to, whether that's an increase in Wi-Fi. If everyone's kids are at home, your Wi-Fi sucks right now. But then there's also a lot of things that people are dealing with that they just don't want to talk about or they can't talk about. And so whether it's mental support needs, income struggles, caregiving in other ways, right, for anyone who might be immunocompromised or elderly or something else. And so giving that money as an additional benefit could be really supportive for everybody.
Excellent. Yeah.
One of the things we did is we did a return to work bonus for folks that came back after furlough, as well as folks that worked from March to August, we structured it a little bit different. So those that weren't furloughed, they got their bonus right away. And then those that can't return to work, we gave them we're allocating those funds over 5 pay periods. So that's a great incentive for folks as well.
Yeah.
Great. Well, so far, no questions. It seems like you guys were completely thorough in your presentations, but we'll give everyone a couple more minutes. And maybe in this period of time while we're waiting, if any of the parents have had any unique experiences or learning experiences with the remote school so far that they'd like to share. I know we're like 2 weeks in maybe at max, so it's probably just getting your feet under you right now. But if you do have any tips or tricks that you've picked up so far, that would be wonderful.
I'll share, Nick. I don't know if it is a tip, but with a third grader who's completely independent, she's super patient, the technology glitches doesn't bother her. And then the kindergartner is like beats his head against the wall and doesn't want to sit on these calls and turns around in his seat all day long. Well, that's not like a technology issue, but that's hard for some kids to just sit and stare at a screen. So we're trying to use other visual controls or other, like if we listen, like let's give him something tactical like Play-Doh or something for his hands or something else for him to do. Or when there's a 10-minute break, which they get often, to have like a break cart next to him that has things that he can quickly, easily pull. So he doesn't go run to his room to grab his Marvel superhero guys for 5 minutes and then get super sad because they have to get taken away. The same with snacks. I don't know about anybody else's kids, but my kids are always hungry and always want snacks. I actually took this from Jen Casillas, who works at the DSA, but we have snack trays set out. They each have their name. They're loaded with snacks for the day, and they come and pull snacks. And if it's all gone by 10 a.m., that's it. It's all gone. But that way they're not interrupting mom as I'm working to just ask for a snack. Those are mom hacks.
That is awesome.
That's some good feedback. My daughter, she's like, Mom, you're kind of a hypocrite because you don't let me have a lot of screen time. And now all I have to do is look at the screen. And I'm like, well, okay, good, fair point. So like you said about Play-Doh, something tactical. She has a squishy ball. And then I have like a snack rolling cart. She's a gymnast. So having her sit in front of a screen for long amounts of time, that just does not feel well with her personality type. So on the 10-minute breaks, I set like a yoga mat so she can practice her routine and do that while she's on a 10-minute break. And then I'm like, okay, redirect. Now we have to go sit back in our chair. Grab your squishy ball.
That's smart. That's smart. I had to get my son because he's in 2nd grade, but he can't sit still, like not even at the dining room table. And so I got him one of those bouncy ball chairs, the ones that had like the little legs on them too. And so he hasn't gotten in trouble yet, I guess, in class, but it's only 4 days in, so.
Only a matter of time. Well, we did have a couple of questions that came in. I think one is for Anne. It was a question of, are some of the resources shareable, specifically the color block schedule idea and the 1 through 4 flow chart? We will be sending out the slide decks, but maybe if there's like a more functional sample of that people could use for themselves, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, those are all just self-made Excel tools. So if that is something that someone needs assistance with, I can definitely send a blank template your way, Nick, if there's a panelist we can connect them to.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, I can include that in my follow-up email for anyone who's interested. And then Jessica, a question for you from Lisa. In the beginning, you mentioned defining flexibility. I was wondering what that looks like.
Yeah, make sure I'm not muted. That's a really great question. And it's something we're actually working to give definitions to companies. I think what we realized is that everyone was saying, well, we have flexible work hours, or we have flexible, workspace. And the question I kept asking, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? I think right now in times, so many time of uncertainty, people want boundaries, right? We're like, just like our kids, right? We need some type of boundaries. We need to understand what's okay and what's not okay. Otherwise, we're feeling really anxious when we're coming to the workplace. So, flexibility looks like, you have to show up during these specific hours. or, you know, we only hold meetings between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., right? Let's just start creating some boundaries and some definitions around what flexibility looks like across the board, across the organization, and then also within our own teams, because our team structures will look so different.
That's so great. And it really, it's very similar to actually a program at Commute Seattle that we provide to a lot of our clients called FlexWork, which is essentially a combination of all the different types of adaptable work, starting with just the concept of telework, which everyone's very familiar and somewhat comfortable with now. But before COVID, that was something that many organizations, many companies never considered, never offered. People didn't know how to take advantage of it or be effective. We're seeing now that a lot of businesses realize that that works, but in this telework period of time, the 40-hour work week, the 9-to-5 schedule has really been reimagined. People understand that, you know, we're able to get our work done at different times, and that if you're home, you might want to go on a walk to get out of your apartment at lunch, or take your dog out, or if you have kids, you know, help them with school or take them to an activity, but you're still able to get your work done at a different time. So that would be really that flexible work schedule. And we also really encourage businesses to define where that flexibility begins and ends, and to sort of approach, especially during this period of time, work as more of like a project-based management as opposed to like an hourly management style of that a lot of offices would employ. And we really think that during this period of time, it's a great opportunity for businesses to think about that as not just something we do during a global pandemic, but something that can be a really great quality of life workplace culture moving forward. Realizing that, especially in the early reopening phases, traffic and congestion is going to be really rough. Our commutes are going to be very long. We're going to have very different transit options, whether you're coming from West Seattle and can no longer go over the bridge, whether one of your bus lines was eliminated during service changes, whether we're still experiencing social distancing and there's not much capacity on transit, or whether everyone else is driving in single occupancy vehicles and our traffic is just off the charts. It's going to look a lot different. So continuing to provide a benefit that allows people to work more flexibly is going to be essential. So we do have a couple more minutes if anyone has any final questions, but it doesn't seem like many folks do. So, one just popped in. What kind of long-term changes do you foresee the pandemic having on workplace and family personal needs? This is open to anyone.
As far as long-term effects, I think it really, in regards to school and children who are in preschool through 12th grade, I think it's going to vary depending on which school district they're in, what type of hybrid models that your child's school is going to be. So it's that constant communication and that empathy and trying to come up with a flexible plan that works for that employee and their family. I know I just got an email yesterday about my daughter's school possibly going into a hybrid model where they're going to be going to school 3 days a week and schooling virtual school 2 days a week. So how does that affect the way I change my working schedule? So I think it's that grace and flexibility, and it's not going to be the same for everyone, just dependent on what your own individualized needs are based on school districts as well.
I think that's such a good point. Like it comes back to that defining flexibility as our children start to come back to school. I work very closely with childcare providers, and most of them are open in Washington State now. And there's very strict CDC and Department of Health guidelines, and it's not like a question of, like, especially as we think about school opening, my thought is that it's not going to be if there's a case of COVID, it's going to be when there's a case of COVID, right? And when school shuts down, and when we're going to be, we thought, leaving home for sick time, or leaving work to go pick up sick kids was kind of a pain before. What happens when you get the 12 p.m. call and it's like, oh, somebody in a classroom down the hall has a case of COVID and we have to close the entire school to do cleaning for the next 10 days. What does that look like, right? So how can we make sure that we have the policies in place. We're creating a structure or an environment right now that works for flexible time and can continue as a norm within the company, and not just seen as a like, oh, it's just another 6 months, we'll have to do this. No, it's probably going to be much longer.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going to be very much so an ebb and flow of, we make a little bit of progress and then we have an outbreak or whatnot and have to sort of go back. So just being mindful that it's not going to be totally linear as we continue to move forward. So I'm not seeing any other questions pop in. I just wanted to thank our panelists again. It was so wonderful to hear from 3 different people that are working so diligently to make sure that employers are supporting these parents while also doing their own multitasking as parents with kids that are returning to school. I will be sending out a recording of this as well as the slides and some additional information in a follow-up email. If anyone has any follow-up questions, please reach out to Commute Seattle. And thank you everyone for attending today.
Bye. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for pulling us together.
Yep. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.